Hey folks, my name is Shane Drake. Bad faith actors have implemented a technology covertly that is in us already. And they've done this through nanoparticulate, that your choice was taken away from you. And now we're at a point where you either have to trust the people who gave you this technology, who took your tax dollars to develop it, to implement it, or you can trust independent people like me. In 2020, when they announced the mRNA vaccine program and all this other stuff, I had remembered seeing some stuff about universal vaccines and such, and quantum nano DNA ID. So I looked into it, and I found that the same people developing the mRNA technology and the quantum nanodot DNA technology were also the ones developing something called nanowire antenna for DARPA. All they are spike proteins assembled that self-assemble in your blood. So when you have these spike proteins seeded throughout your blood system, they form chains. Do you understand? So when I saw that the same team, CRISPR-Cas9, Bill Gates, Harvard, NIH team that was working on the COVID mRNA vaccine had also developed this spike protein warfare to deliver what they called biosensors. The further I looked into it, I realized that they could use a signal. If you had enough of these in you, they could have a signal sent that could induce a current on these to create something like cardiac arrest or internal bleeding, etc. That it was just a matter of amplitude, frequency, the right code, the right signal. So I put all this information together and I presented it to the main House of Representatives. And I did that in 2022. I was fearful because this seemed like a giant conspiracy, and anyone I brought it up to made me feel crazy. Made me feel like I was looking in and connecting something that was totally unrelated. In the news, they kept telling you the mRNA recodes or tells your cells to produce spike proteins, or it knows what to look for. A new way of attacking viruses. All because the COVID virus had spike proteins or coronal proteins or assemblies on its outside that resembled the spike protein. So we must seed your body with spike proteins, aka nanowire antennas. Representative Heidi Sampson. And we talked for about 45 minutes. And I remember very distinctly being fearful that perhaps, this conspiracy would endanger me and her, and we should talk about this in person. But about halfway into the conversation, she stopped me and she said point blank, she said, "Shane, you don't understand. They told us there is a kill signal. We just don't know when they're going to use it," end quote. And I was blown away. I said, "We've got to do everything to stop this." And she laughed at me because I did not understand how embroiled the system is. And it's all public information. So how would we go about solving this? How would we go about curing this? What are we going to do to get this tech out of us? Well, it begins with how it got in us. They told us that viruses are this threat, but they never showed you a virus. They showed you CGI. They showed you artist renditions and illustrations. But what they never told you is that they have an isolated one, an imaged one, okay? Which essentially just takes a sample, adds a bunch of material, turns it into a goo, and then analyzes every RNA segment that it can find. And then it recombines those into 50 million plus different combinations. And this is how they tell you COVID exists, because one of those combinations of RNA, random combinations, matched what they think SARS-CoV's RNA coding is. That's it. Everything else is, there is no electron microscopy of viruses. They're showing you smoke and mirrors here. So you have this fear campaign about viruses. So how do they develop a biosensor in your blood? Well, they need the building blocks to be there. Anywhere that they can legally make way for metal particulate to legally be included with something, they can do it. So for instance, food, it's processed on a machine, and the machine is aluminum and steel and has all these components. So the FDA has an allowable amount of aluminum and steel and iron and whatever particulate, nanoparticulate, that can be included safely, right? That's what they tell you, safely. And they add up over time. But really it's about getting these building blocks inside of you, because all the biosensor is a chip of graphene with aluminum or gold or even heavy proteins like the spike proteins electroplated or electrodeposited on top of the graphene. That's all it is. That's all that's happening. So what they're doing is they're adding it to things like jet fuel. Jet fuel now has an allowable amount, not an allowable, it's included for lubrication purposes, nanoparticles that are exactly the same size of the nanoparticles needed to create these biosensors. So what they're doing is these particles, you're breathing them in, you're absorbing them through your skin, through your eating them, you're taking them as medicine, you're taking them as injectables, okay? And these building blocks get inside your blood. And your immune response is to encapsulate the junk inside of the cell. That junk that your cell captured, those lipid nanoparticles designed to break beyond the blood-brain barrier. Do you understand? They're so small, they can get into the blood-brain barrier, past it. So this junk's inside the cell, it's done its job, it's captured the junk. Now these pandemics, so that they can use what's called INSA, or EMF warfare, that they've developed, where they're essentially microwaving your cells using super high frequencies, extremely high frequencies, extremely low frequencies to vibrate the cell in a way where the cell wall ruptures and releases these lipid nanoparticles, spike proteins, graphene, etc., all at once. Because the point is, it needs to be floating around all at once so that it can then assemble. Electrodeposition or electroplating. They're essentially sending an electrical signal through your body, makes these nanoparticulate attract themselves to the graphene, thus electroplating it in your blood. It's then basically a little chip that's organized in a very specific way, where if they send a very specific 5G, 6G frequency to that it can then dance, move, induce, emit, which will then cause you to secrete enzymes or produce proteins. And these biosensors communicate through a network in your blood that can then be read and monitored remotely. The news says they've cured cancer, that all of these people together collectively have worked on a cure and cured cancer. The point is that if they can turn off the cancer cells, they can turn on the cancer cells using exactly the same technology. It's in the patents. It's all there for us to see and more. Because once they have this assembled in your bloodstream, it needs to be amplified. That's these nanowire antennas. If you look in the patent for the biosensor, in between the biosensor and the network is the amplifier, the communication device. That's a spike protein antenna, okay? So they've created a network inside your body without your consent, right? And what people weren't aware of is that these spike proteins continue to replicate. They thought that it didn't change your DNA. RNA transcribes through reverse transcriptase. That new cell it makes, it's transcribing and retranscribing itself over and over and over again until your whole body is producing these spike proteins, prioritizing a toxin over their normal function. Okay, that's going to hit a delta, a breaking point in society. Okay, and that's coming. We need the exact signal, the exact frequency, so that we can then take our own equipment, say a frequency or signal generator, and different types of multiplexers or signal amplifiers to then turn off those sensors ourselves, so we don't have to trust them, so we don't have to utilize their 6G hubs, their networks, where they're going to control us using currency or DNA ID. We need an independent solution, is what I'm trying to say here. We have to fix it ourselves because we can't trust them. If you don't understand that all of this was a setup, they're saying we've already cured it, okay? We don't want their cure. We want our own cure. Give us the power. Give the power back to us. And that's really all I've got to say on this. I mean, I really want to expand more on the cure. Maybe this will never get heard. And maybe it's too late. But the one thing they haven't thought about with their grand plan is you. You're the variable. You take this information and you run with it. You empower people with it. You empower yourself with it. That's what the whole setup is. If they tell you what they're going to do and you stand by and watch them do it, you get what I'm saying? So now take this information and do something with it. Prove it wrong if you think I'm crazy, or find the cure. Anyways, peace and Godspeed.